His little test is a little learning. This is covering a bunch of different stuff, basically, and then there's a little sort of an emission type test at the end for the most part. Got a couple of Dodge Caravans that came in because the transmission had screwball shift. Well, this one did. The first one did because they had screwball shift patterns. Wasn't slipping, but it didn't shift gears consistently, and there were some shifts erratic and delayed. There was no recognizable pattern. Sometimes it would shift just fine. So the customer had took it to a transmission shop. They said they have a new radiator installed because there was some water mixed with the transmission fluid. You know, it's milky looking when they pulled it out of there, and the transmission fluid. But it wasn't, the shop wasn't interested in doing work on the transmission, nor were they interested in replacing the radiator. Or they told them what they thought might be wrong with it. And so, and this gets better. You know what I mean? So, hold on, let me lock my phone so I don't do crazy stuff. All right. So, there was a bit of water in the fluid, but the cooler is external to the radiator. So the cooler wasn't even built into the radiator on this one. It was outside. It was like, you know, mounted in front of the radiator. So how can water get in through the radiator if the cooler is not even a part of the radiator? And so where did the water come from? I don't know. So I found myself wondering if they had gone through some hot water in the maybe went in the transmission vent, because all the transmissions have got a vent. If water gets up high enough, it can get in there that way. And all that. Now, a little story. Whenever I wrote this article, and I'll tell you about that in a minute, there was a guy that sent me an email that I thought was kind of interesting. But so we pulled this PO 700 code and decided to do a full fluid exchange followed by a filter change to clean the pan and replace the shift solenoid assembly and all that. I told the lady what the risks were. I said, this may not fix it. We're going to try this. So we went ahead and did that. Used our transmission flush machine, you know, do a whole, replace everything, and then we put a shift solenoid pack on it. And that about $150 for that. The fluid, you know, she had a couple $100 invested when she was done. And so there was a little bit of glitter in the pan, some fuzz on the magnet. You know, you'll see some of that on a high mileage one anyway. And 150,000 miles on that transmission. So we put the fluid, the filter, and the shift solenoid. The code was gone, and the transmission shifted just fine. Now, when I wrote about this in Motor Age, there was a guy that says he was an expert on these transmissions. So he sent me this really, and it wasn't in a magazine, but 2 or 3 months, maybe 4 after I wrote it, you know, because it takes a little while for it to go through the pipeline and get there. So he wrote back and says, you should have rebuilt that transmission if it had any fluid in it, water in the fluid at all. And he was really, you know, combing my ears down about that. So I called the lady up and I said, how's that transmission doing? Because she'd been driving the thing for, you know, 3 or 4 months. And she said, well, I've been to Montgomery on it twice a week. I ain't had no problem with it. So did it need to be rebuilt or did it not? I mean, you know what I'm saying? And I just wrote back to him. I said, proof's in the pudding, man. You know, I understand what you're saying, but in this particular case, she knew the risks, and we went ahead and did it, and she hadn't had any trouble with it. So, you know, maybe it's one of those things where if you ever did it again, you may have trouble, but in this case, it worked out. And that's what I was talking there, you know. So, engine vibration was felt in the car body. And it came in with an NVH concern. They could feel the engine shaking the car when it was idling. Now, sometimes you feel that on a 4-cylinder because they're trying to jump up and down when they're running anyway, especially if the motor bouncer's off. So, we found a rock in the motor mount. See the rock? So when we got that rock out of the motor mount, everything was smooth. That's all it was.
What's up with mine?
Huh?
Mine be doing that same thing.
It shakes, you know.
If you buy everything you just said with the radiator, all that.
So does it run rough? I mean, yeah. Like when you, what I'm saying is when you hold your hand by the pipe, is it going, or is it going? If it's, you know, that if it's puffing, it's going to be skipping.
Nah, I ain't
you got to make sure all that. But anyway, so the other one running hot in traffic. So it came in with the complaints running hot in traffic, tested the fan using the method of putting a test light in series with the fan, turning it through, see if it goes out, you know what I'm saying? And the fan was wide open, no continuity. Well, this is what we found when we disconnected the fan. That's why we just showing that there's nothing there. See, when we ought to be getting the ground through the fan motor when we got the test light up to hot and we're going to the relay, but this right here was burned up. All right, so this guy said this van was all over the road. 15 passenger van didn't quite drive right. You know, that's how they described it, all over the road. And so they decided to have a couple of new tires put on the rear and move the worn but still good tires to the front, which was a bad idea because the ones in the rear was softer than they should have been, even with a recommended 80 psi of air pressure. And the front was called for 50 on that 15 passenger van. And the new tires caused it to feel prone to yaw on turns. It just didn't feel right because it had tires that didn't have as much tread on the, you know, like the front tires were wider and firmer because they were the old ones, and the back ones were kind of soft. And I mean, it just mismatched tires is basically what they had on that. And so we moved the tires to the rear just to see them. But they needed, what they really needed was a full set of tires. You don't need to put you always need to put the best tires on the rear as far as tread goes. But in a situation like this, when you put the tires on the rear and mismatch the ones on the front, the right way to fix it is put brand new tires all the way around. They're just alike. You know. So. All right, it's 2002 Crown Vicky. This is one that I bought from the college at auction. You remember when I bought them cars? I bought 3 of them cars, you know. But all over the road, the college owned the Crown Victoria. It came with a complaint. It's all over the road thing, you know. It had come in with complaints of a popping noise and brake squeal, and we repaired that. But we hadn't noticed any all over the road issues on that one. So as I drove the car, I could tell the front end was kind of tight. The steering almost wouldn't return to center unless you helped it. And while it wasn't exactly all over the road, that little stiff steering must have been what they're talking about. Now sometimes these have got variable assist power steering on them, which is an electronic thing. And also, and what it does, these, whenever the variable assist power steering stops working, they're really easy to steer. And that'll also make them feel like they're all over the road, you know what I mean? And so, and that little solenoid in the power steering pump will burn out. It's only supposed to have 12 ohms, and if it's wide open, you have issues with that. Can't get the solenoid, you gotta get the whole pump. So anyway, so we got this here, the lift of the front wheels clear of the ground. You can tell when you turn the steering wheel, the flame was stiffer than it should have been. When we popped the tie rod ends loose from the spindle, both the spindles were really hard to move. I mean, they were stiff and all that. So we've got some ball joints and sway bar links and took care of that because it made it a whole lot easier, you know, made it work like it was supposed to. And on that. Now here's another 2005 Caravan. Had a strange rattling noise that was coming from the belt area. Okay, seemed to be tied to changes in engine speed. Things would seem normal till the engine was accelerated a little bit, and the noise would come and go abruptly with changes in engine speed, and it always exhibited the same pattern. It was always just like that. My initial thought, seeing similar noises like that before, was to condemn the overrun generator pulley. You know, that little pulley there's got a one-way clutch on the inside of it. And those things love to make noises even when their innards become compromised. Okay, now they got a couple of spiral clutch springs, a lot of them do. There's various different ways they're made. This was made like that. This is one that I cut apart so you can see it. And there's a heavy spring and a light spring, and it's one of these. They make the pulley really special there. That's there's a bunch of different things, and so the natural tendency to tighten up when torqued in one direction and loosen in the opposite gives the generator pulley the ability to grab or release the alternating rotor shaft when load speed demands are met, and when those pulleys fail, they make weird noises. Okay, there's one that failed that we took apart. Okay, so we pulled the alternator, popped the round cover off the bolt that conceals the 17 millimeter Allen socket, used the homemade tool. When I felt the relationship between the pulley and its hub, you can usually tell when one's bad. This one didn't seem to be faulty. And I'm not going to throw a $70 pulley on it for that. So the whole thing that we did, everything we done took place with the van on the ground. From the top. We didn't look under the bottom. So we put it up on the lift and pulled the right front tire and splash shield, found the problem. The little water pump flange is Y-shaped, got 3 arms with a bolt hole in each one, and it bolts to that Y-shaped flange. There's a matching hole in the pulley, so if we can take the pulley loose, you can turn it, you know, and that's what it looks like. And that's what we had. We had a busted water pump right there. See them little ears where that pulley was? It just broke slam off there. And I don't know how common that is, but I hadn't seen it before. Didn't take but an hour to throw a water pump on it, put the alternator and everything back on it, got everything bled out. So about every busy person that works on vehicles runs into stuff. You know, say Adam was working on that motor out there in that door, and he had never seen one like that before, but he figured out how to get it out. You know what I mean? You got to have a little bit of mechanical knowledge. You got to understand how to do math really well too. All right, so seems to deepen our understanding every time we do that. So I talked to another guy that was that I know that's a really good mechanic. They fixed a Pontiac that had been everywhere for an overheating problem. Figured out when the driver pulled the car up to where he was standing, somebody had installed an aftermarket fan, hooked the wires up backwards. So if you see a fan that's been put on there, a lot of times they just come with 2 wires swinging. and they put the connector on there so that they can plug it in. If they hook them up the wrong way, the fan's blowing instead of pulling. It needs to pull air through the radiator, not blow. Because if it's blowing and you're driving down the road, it's going to cause no airflow there. What's going on there? Pushing the air instead of pulling. You can also tell by putting a newspaper in front of the radiator and letting the fan come on. If it blows it away from the radiator, you know it's going the wrong way. It's real easy to figure that out, you know. Well, it is an easy one. This girl pulled up out there on a Trailblazer, and yeah, she was a little gal that had been around college for a while, and she was from up the ways, Luverne or somewhere. So she said, my car won't start. She walked in there about 4 o'clock one afternoon. Everybody else was gone. Well, let's see what we can see. So it's been misfound right now, so I went out there and put the scan tool on. Didn't get a crank sensor code. You know, I mean, didn't get a crank sensor signal. No fire and all that. And so the crank sensor is just right down there. Open the hood. See where it looks, where it mounts. Open the hood. You bend over, you can reach it like that if you got a long arm, you know. So I just got a $16 crank sensor from the parts store and popped it in there. She was good to go. Didn't take 15 minutes to fix that one. So here's a customer that's been beat up, overcharged repeatedly. Other mechanics thought it was some kind of Superman, right? So the next problem, she has him smacking us around. Well, anyway, so this farmer dropped his truck off at the dealership where I was working at one time, and he gave a blank check to the cashier and said, I want my truck fixed, it's skipping. Now, would you take your vehicle to a dealership and hand him a blank check? He signed the bottom line, handed her a blank check, said, whatever the bill is, just fill it out.
Man.
They gave me the ticket, and they said, this guy gave us a blank check. I put one spark plug wire on it. Because I wanted the guy to come back next time he needed work done if he trusted us that much. I mean, I wasn't going to betray that. You know, because that's really all he needed, you know, the plugs were in good shape and all that stuff. But, you know, if you're looking on an engine performance thing, let's say that we got one with spark plug wires on it. Back in the day when they just had one coil like the old Bronco we got out there, I would take a test light and hook it up to, you know, regular conventional test light. And I'd hook that thing up to the negative side of the battery and go into the tack side of the coil. Not the side that's hot all the time, but the side that flickers when it makes it fire. And if it's got an open spark plug wire, that light will pulse. I got a video I can show you that I made of it. But what I'd also do is if I put that test light in there and snap the throttle and the engine bogged, I knew it needed spark plugs. It's just that quick, you knew. Or if it was a misfire, sometimes I'd take soapy water or something, you know, 409 or whatever, and spray on the plug wires while I was running. If one of them starts going bap, 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 you know, like that, whoop, that's a bad plug wire. I mean, real fast you can find stuff if you kind of got familiar with that. Now it's a little tougher on the coil on plug stuff, you know, but usually you'll get a misfire code on your tool, or you can, if you got an IDS and you're working on a Ford, you know, it'll give you that beautiful little pattern and all that. Well, I fixed that one. So, what kind of concern can be caused by this? This is an engine repair thing. Nobody's ever talked to you about that before?
The rings are lined up.
Yeah, big time. Look at that. They're lined up with one another. You're going to have compression loss right there. If the ring gaps are stacked, there's going to be compression whistling past there. And that's bad news. You know that ring right there kind of acts like a squeegee too. And so it squeegees the oil off of there. So, you know, those don't need to be lined up either. These need to be on the opposite side of the piston. I like to put that one over this one and one on the top on the other side. All right, test question 1. Engine sludge can bring about oil starvation that leads to bearing failure and can be caused by what? A, frequent short drives that don't allow the engine to reach operating temperature. B, a bad thermostat. C, a poorly operating PCV system. Or D, any of the above. You know. EGR system failure can cause A, higher cylinder combustion temperatures, B, pinging and detonation, C, higher NOx emissions, or D, any of the above. We've talked about EGR. I don't know why I turned off that light for this. A technician has been led by diagnostic trouble codes to investigate fuel trim numbers that are as follows. Short fuel trim, 0. Long fuel trim, 27%. A, the fuel filter may be restricted. B, the crankcase oil may be contaminated with fuel. Hey,
Hey,
C, the fuel pressure may be low, or D, any of the above. My goodness, what you got there for me?
that's that stuff you called me yesterday,
Okay.
and then this is what there's some
Man, I
paperwork.
called you yesterday for this, and you're gonna bring it, you're 2 days
You
late.
said bring it on your
My
next.
goodness, and the tickets I
Trip.
gotta sign. You know you're gonna be on YouTube, right?
What?
Yep, I got a camera going there. This is
Maybe I'll
Kathy,
get
everybody,
rich.
she works at Advanced Solar Works, okay? All right, and there's one, there's the rear main seal set. Wait a minute, well, he didn't charge me for that yet?
What?
The rear main seal, we just put the rear main seal in.
Oh, is that it right there?
That must be, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't
Look
throw that
at
on.
you. You know how many times I done been over today?
Really? Well, the parts girl has to do that, you know? Window lift motors for the Buick, there we go. And Buick, what else we got here?
That's the.
That's that stuff.
Is
right
this
there.
is that right? Is that
That's
kind
fine,
of?
that's fine, I ain't hard to please on that.
Those you got a bigger can and. that's-
Outstanding performance. Put my tickets on my desk, take your tickets back to Brett, or whoever.
Okay.
And, y'all
And
call
I'll
back.
reach that.
Tell Brett I got an advisory meeting on the 16th he needs to come to.
The 16th.
Yep. Of November. All right. All right, right there, y'all already answered this question, right? If an engine is knocking due to rod bearing failure, it could be due to A, rust clogged injectors, B, plugged EGR passages, C, a broken relief valve spring or stuck relief valve, any of the above. Ready? Okay, technician A says an engine oil pump is a positive displacement pump. Technician B says all engine oil pumps turn at half crankshaft speed. Who is correct? Technician A says a bad radiator cap can cause rust and corrosion buildup in a car's cooling system. Technician B says the large pipe on a heater core is usually the heater core's inlet pipe. Who's correct about that? Technician A says most coolant systems call for a 50-50 mix of coolant and distilled water. Technician B says water pump driven by the back surface of the serpentine belt and a water pump driven by the engine timing belt generally spin in opposite directions. A, B, both or neither. ASE questions are, a lot of them are A and B. Both or neither. Technician A says an injector firing frequency is directly tied to crankshaft sensor input. Technician B says that on an engine with a crankshaft sensor and a distributor, improper distributor rotor alignment can be corrected by adjusting the ignition timing. Who's correct about that? A technician is investigating a no-start condition on a vehicle with the following PID values. Intake air temperature, 101 degrees. Barometric pressure, 28 degrees mercury. TPS, 0.8 of a volt. PCT, 45 degrees. Transmission oil temperature, 47 degrees. Battery voltage, 12.5 volts. What's the most likely reason for the no-start? You see questions like this on the Advanced Engine Performance ASE test. A $42 inside door handle on a 2005 Nissan Sentra is being replaced for a quoted labor price of $350. This is a true story. Technician A says the labor price is appropriate because of the skill level required to do the job. Technician B says parts and service providers should set their prices based on whatever they know the customer is willing to pay. End of the slideshow. All right, let's back up and see how we did on our test. All right. What do we get, what kind of an answer did we put for that one, somebody? What'd you put? Huh? Huh? What?
I didn't even get to do it.
It's a G.
Hmm?
I put C.
What about any of the above? Short trips, they won't let it reach operating temperature, bad thermostat, running too cold, poorly operating PCV system, any of the above can cause that. Some things are cause it worse than others. EGR system failure can cause, what'd you put?
Put C.
Any of the above?
Well, sir, all these are any of the above.
Not always.
I'll let you do that.
All right, what about this one here? Is this in any of the above? It's not. So what does a long fuel trim mean? If it's got long fuel trim plus 27, see, it'll show minus, the 27 just basically means plus. Okay, if it said to add fuel, what do you think? You won't typically have that,
It's low.
you won't typically have that because of a restricted fuel filter. Because typically, that's only gonna happen whenever you're, unless it's bad restricted. The crankcase oil contaminated with fuel is gonna cause negative fuel trim. The fuel pressure may be low is the most likely cause of that. You're basically looking for the best answers. If an engine is knocking because of rod bearing failure, it could be because of, what do you think?
B.
It's gonna be this one here. These aren't gonna cause that. This will. Relief valve is in an oil pump. If the relief valve spring is broke, it's gonna have low oil pressure. The engine oil pump is a positive displacement pump. However, if you don't have a relief valve that's causing that pump to have to push that open, that's basically gonna give you your pressure as a relief valve part of it. Relief valve says all engine oil pumps turn at half crankshaft speed. That's a lie, because the crankshaft is actually driving it directly on some of them. It's right on the nose of the crankshaft. A lot of them are driven by the distributor, and that's half crankshaft speed, but not, here's the deal breaker is when it says all, or always, or never. You know what I mean? Technician A says a bad radiator cap can cause rust and corrosion buildup in the car's cooling system. Yeah, if air can just come and go, all that oxidation takes place, it just makes a terrible mess out of everything. Technician B says a large pipe on a heater core, that's the outlet, not the inlet. If you're, whenever it goes in, it needs to be going through the small pipe or the one without a restrictor in it. If you're running it through the big pipe and you got a restriction on the other side, it's gonna bust the heater core. That's just the way it is. All right.
So what was that?
5310. And
That
so
was it, right?
B is wrong. Hello, this is Richard. Hey,
Yeah.
hey, yeah, sure. I believe so. I tell you, who could tell you more about that than me would be Deborah Hudson. Call her and hit her with that and see what she tells you, because she knows all the answers on that. All right? Yes, ma'am. All right. What do you think? 50-50 mix. Is that true? Most of them. Technician B says water pumps driven by the back surface of the serpentine belt, they spin in opposite directions. Now on some of the Jeeps, used to have, some of them had V-belts and some of them had serpentine belts that drove the thing, and the water pump on the two different engines would look just exactly alike, but the impeller was backwards. And if you put the wrong water pump on it, it'd overheat. You know? So anyway, that's gonna be both of those guys. Look at this one here. A is right on here. Technician A is firing frequency. All right, but you can't set the timing on one that's got a crank sensor unless you can find a way to move the crank sensor. See what I mean? So you turning the distributor's not going to change the timing. All it changes is rotor alignment and sometimes cam timing on that. Okay, or cam sensor timing. So basically, that one's going to be A only. All right, and this one here. What do you say? What'd y'all put on that? I know, Tim, you had to do math to do this one, so you probably need to. What do you think?
Put A.
Well, think about what you're looking at here. You got 3 temperature sensors there, right? Okay, one of those temperature sensors is disagreeing with the other 2. And the transmission oil temperature and even coolant temperature sensor are reading real close to the same temperature. So if I got one of them disagreeing with the other 2, the guy that's by himself, he probably ain't right. Now this is gonna be in the enhanced side of the system, because if you're in the OBD2 side generic, it's gonna read 40 below 0 if that sensor's open. But on the enhanced, it'll substitute a value, like 101. What happens right here is you wind up with an engine that's running so rich when you're trying to start it up, it wets the spark plug and it won't even start. If it's 40 degrees and IAT's reading 101 degrees on some of them I've seen, I don't know if it's like on all of them or not. Well, that one there's gonna be an open IAT sensor. Always compare all 3 of them sensors together, and if one of them's disagreeing with the other 2, that one's a bad one. All right, and this one right here, you know the answer to that one right there. Please. Now, you know it ain't hard to put a door handle on. That happened. This lady went to a dealership and they wanted $350 to put that little plastic door handle on. And she brought it over here, bought the door handle for $40. And I had one of my people hadn't even done it before, put it on 20 minutes. Ain't that hard to do. But they wanted her $350, you know. That's like those folks that charge that girl $500 to change 4 spark plugs.
What?
Yeah, that's a true story too.
So that was D.
Yeah. All right. End of story.
Yeah.